See that? Hit and run. Whoever he is, he's gone.
He's a pro.
We got no movement, not a sign of a shadow. I'm going down there, and that's it.
Roger that.
Got eyes on that wall?
I got eyes on your ass, fancy pants. Come on, man, talk to me. What do you see?
Something's not right.
Go ahead. Coming, man. How bad is it?
Eyes the bullet went through.
I got it man down. Ah!
What's your position, over?
We got a sniper. High caliber weapon. Requesting instruction.
Sergeant, I need your exact location.
Say that again.
Sergeant.
You got an accent. Not American. You a sniper? Where are you, man?
You get eyes on him? Where'd he come from?
I don't know!
If I were you, I would start talking, Isaac.
What do you want?
I want to get to know you.
I get one shot.
No. Second you touch that rifle, you're dead!
This is true. When this is over, his family won't recognize him. You're dehydrated.
How is this end, man?
Death. You will bleed out.
Scope is an extension of my eye.
You're fading. You're fading.
How fantastic.
The trigger is an extension of my fist.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
The rifle is an extension of me.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And I strike you down.
I know where you are now.
Bang.
Guys, give it up one more time for this crew. They made a great movie.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Guys, congratulations. You took a risk and you succeeded. It's not every day that filmmakers and actors can say that. It's amazing. So when you decided to do this movie, was there any nerves? Were you guys worried about doing it? Because it's a big risk.
Yeah, I mean, I really believe in risk. I just finished shooting a film with Tom Cruise, and he told me, you know, if you're not terrified going to work in the morning, you should maybe change professions. And for sure on the wall, you know, there's so little to hide behind. I mean, no, figuratively and literally. You know, Aaron's just got to deliver, you know, a performance that holds the audience for the whole movie.
You make it
We're shooting it so
too.
fast because there's no, you know, you just have to commit to a way you're going to do a scene, and you can't shoot it a second or third way. And I haven't really put myself out there since Swingers, where we just had to commit, and we're either going to work or we're going to fall flat on our face, and there's just nothing in between. But I really feel like, especially when you make smaller movies, you know, it should be great or awful. Honestly, if you're making like Avengers, if it's pretty good, you know, people are kind of happy you didn't screw it up. But you know, if you're making a movie like The Wall, like you got to swing for the fences.
Well, I think you take even, you know, you take a risk, but you give the two of you even less to hide behind as well going into this movie. You could have had more music, you could have made it more robust, but you seem to go, as a filmmaker, smaller and smaller, more and more truthful as possible.
Well, I wanted to give the audience the experience of really what it feels like to be a soldier pinned down in battle. You know, and soldiers in battle don't have a score, right? I mean, in real life, they don't have that. And, you know, if you look at, say, the Bourne Identity, I really was focusing on little details and finding, you know, a lot of drama and suspense out of them. And The Wall was sort of the culmination of maybe what's been a sort of lifelong quest to really get to some kind of pure first-person action film.
Yeah, I want to get back to the sort of the chronology of your career a little bit in a minute and talk about how you've played with structure, narrative structure, and sort of seemingly been obsessed with that over your career. But Aaron, I got to ask, you know, lots of people ask actors when they play soldiers, what kind of research did you do? But this is such a specific kind of role, considering you're really doing one thing. as a soldier. So what kind of research did you do to understand what a soldier would do or how they would react in this particular kind of situation?
Well, I, luckily everyone in the military sort of, came forward and was extremely helpful. I spent some time with ex-Marines, even Gold Star wives who put me in touch. In fact, this one woman, Jane Horton, actually was very influential, and she put me in touch with she lost her husband as a sniper. I mean, he died in action, and I went to sniper school. She put me in touch with the guys where he trained, and it's one of the top sniper schools in the country in Fort Chaffee in Arkansas, and I spent 4 days on a base with those guys. So obviously I learned how to do all the things you need to do, shoot a rifle and all the technical stuff. But more importantly, it was the hanging out with the guys and connecting with them and picking up their mannerisms, their banter, their habits, all those kind of things that are more influential as a character, I think.
How nervous were you going into this project?
Well, I mean, I first read the script and I was blown away by it. I mean, it's very unique and original and rare to find those kind of stories. I mean, you've seen them every now and again, like Castaway or even Tom Hardy in Locke or Phone Booth. Those kind of scenarios, one location, one main character, kind of, pinned down or what have you, and they're rare. But this was really interesting and it's very ambitious. And Doug Liman was attached to it, and that's when all those things come together, and I wanted to go on that journey with a great filmmaker and someone who has a strong vision and makes bold, decisive choices, and so I was nervous. I wasn't really nervous because I was more intrigued and excited, and I think like what Doug said earlier is just like I personally like to be out of my comfort zone. I love to be challenged, and I love to be in a scenario where we can make mistakes, because when you make mistakes is when you're learning. And I knew that this job was going to be an experience and an experiment, and I always embrace those kind of things.
Doug, going into this, you start working with Aaron. You guys get on set. You've got a short amount of time to shoot this film. Did you know how much you were going to strip away as well going into the editing process? Like I said, very minimal amount of music. I think most filmmakers would hide behind a score for a movie like this because they'd be like, one location, 1, 2 actors. There's no way we could get away with doing this as well, but you get away with it. Did he know that going into it? Were you like, we're really going to strip a lot away and it's going to be on you?
I mean, I don't know what, Aaron and I didn't really talk about post-production, but, I mean, this idea that you need a big score to sort of, propel the audience is not something that I've necessarily subscribed to. I mean, I have an incredibly short attention span, so even when Aaron cites these sort of one-location movies, I sort of cringe because I'm like, I was a little bored in some of those. And I was like, I really want to... That part's irrelevant. Like, he's in one location because he can't move from it because a mile away is a sniper, and how do you deal with an adversary who's so powerful? The thing about these sniper rifles is the bullets travel faster than the speed of sound. So the bullet gets to you before the sound of the gunfire gets to you. In fact, you've been dead for about 2.5 seconds by the time the sound of the gunfire reaches you. So how do you survive that? And, and I'm interested in kind of unusual superhero films, and this is my version of a superhero film. I mean, he's kind of like Iron Man. He's got all these pouches filled with, the stuff that soldiers go into combat with, and, how is he going to, and he keeps, he ends up using up everything he has and all of his wits and all of his resources, but, your question was about music, and I actually had an experience on the finale of Mr. and Mrs. Smith. There's a shootout with Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie in an IKEA, and I wanted to play it without any music. So I thought it was way more dramatic and way scarier and way more exciting. And the head of the studio, David Madelon, brought me into his office and said, and I've had, fights with studio executives my whole career. And said, so I was really ready for a big fight, and he was like, let me tell you how it looks from my side of the desk. you made this movie for $120 million. You know, if you made it for like $40 million, you could play the finale without music. But you made it for $120 million, and so we kind of need middle America to sort of not have that much tension. We need them just to have a good time so we can make our money back. And I thought, you know, that I actually agreed. I was like, okay, thank you for showing me how the world looks from your point of view. And like, you did spend a lot of money on this movie, and it wasn't that big a deal. I was like, you know, I get it. You want it to be a little less exciting and a little bit more fun. And that's why they wanted music in there. Whereas The Wall, I wanted this to be exciting because I got a short attention span and I'm not interested in those one location movies.
Is it fair to say you wanted to feel more like an autonomous filmmaker making The Wall?
You know, I think I'm pretty much known for being an autonomous filmmaker in everything I do. I mean, if you search for I don't know if you can say a-hole. Can you say that word? Okay, so if you search asshole director on Google, I'm the first name that comes up.
Is that true?
It really is true.
I've never heard a negative story about you as a director.
Trust me, I'm like.
You keep those on lock and key.
I don't understand. I honestly don't understand, but I think some of that comes from the fact that I'm pretty autonomous, and I don't really, you know, I've been threatened, you know, many times by studios that they're going to fire me, and because I came from making independent films, because I love making The Wall, I'm like, you have nothing to threaten me with. I'll go back to making smaller movies. I love making smaller movies. Even when I make big movies, I end up running off and shooting part of the movie the way we shot The Wall with a smaller crew, because I just love that experience. So it's not that I'm bold, it's just the studios have nothing to threaten me with.
I try to use that here all the time. It doesn't work. You know? You won't
the
leave.
thing is, you know, to call someone's bluff, you have to actually be willing to, like, you can't just say it. I actually love making movies like The Wall. So, you know, somebody saying, you're never going to make a giant studio film again if you don't behave, is like, okay.
What's the closest you've ever come to walking?
No, being fired. I don't quit.
What's the closest
like
you've ever...
Aaron's character in The Wall. I mean, that's probably why I was so excited to make The Wall, is that it's Aaron's character and John Cena's characters, I mean, are under such duress, and they never quit. And I always look for something that's like really personal in the movies I make. It seems like, you know, I make these kind of outrageous films, like what could I have in common with Jason Bourne? But I honestly, in every movie I make, I find something to connect with. And, you know, I've never been a soldier. I did go to Baghdad during the war for shooting some of Fair Game, but I don't, on the surface, I don't have anything in common with Aaron's character or John Cena's character in The Wall. But what I do have in connection with them is that they don't give up. They just pick themselves up and keep trying. So I've never walked from a film, and that's, and these guys don't walk either.
Considering the film is shot in one location, did you shoot it chronologically?
I think we aimed to shoot it chronologically, and then sometimes we'd be...
Other than we had dust storms every afternoon, so we had certain scenes that we wanted to take advantage of the dust storm. So we would jump to those scenes in the afternoon, but otherwise we would stay in chronological order.
What was it like trying to get a scene done in the middle of a dust storm that you weren't manufacturing and didn't have control over?
Well, I mean, that's why we did it. We embraced the nature of
Not
it.
that we had a choice.
Yeah, we didn't have a...
We didn't know there were going to be dust storms every afternoon. Like, when we scouted the location, there were no dust storms. It turns out when you get to July, there's a dust storm every afternoon. And not like a little dust storm. I mean, but I looked around the first time it happened. I said, this is massive production value. Like, this would cost us a fortune to create. And we can use it for the story. So the dust storm actually plays a big part in the movie.
Were you able, what did it feel like to be able to craft your performance around shooting chronologically as opposed to shooting most movies where, you know, you're not, you know, you're shooting one scene from the beginning of the film and one scene from the end of the film on any given day?
Well, it was really extremely helpful at times, but it wasn't always. I mean, it was more due to the fact that the wall, there was just the one wall, and once we knocked it down, it stayed down, and so we had to kind of keep. You know, we only had 14 days to shoot this thing.
Which is crazy.
We had John Cena for 4 days, and those weren't in chronological order. So And sometimes I would shoot, you know, when I'm shouting and talking to him, he wasn't actually there, and
He was in like Tokyo wrestling.
yeah, right. So, no, it was amazing, and we'd get him. Yeah, he'd fly in and come and do that sort of stuff. But and like, you know, the dust storm might kick up, and it's 3 hours earlier than we was expecting, and we have to quickly jump to another scene, in which case it might have been something that wasn't on that day, and then it might have been, in one case, a couple of times, it was maybe a 10-page.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have to say, Aaron really bailed me out of a few tight pickles on this movie, because we did have a day where the dust storm just came unexpectedly early, and we had to just rejigger the whole schedule, and suddenly we're like, we're going to scene 36 today, which had been scheduled for the next day. And I look at what scene 36 is, and it's 10 pages of dialogue. And I'm like, oh, Aaron, how do you feel about jumping to scene 36? Like, you know, how long does it take you to memorize these 10 pages? Because, you know, we don't have the sun forever. And Aaron's like, oh, I've memorized the whole script. Wow. Let me just take a look at it. And he memorized the entire script. I mean, I think he actually memorized the script before I even cast him. Because out of you know, like Aaron was talking about being in The Wall before I even met him. He decided he was going to star in the movie, and my office is not that far from here, and he flew himself to New York and showed up in my office, and was like, you don't need to look any further, I'm here. We played ping pong for about 3 hours and talked about the script, and he totally, you know, I was like, wow, I wish life could be this easy this often.
What did you guys talk about when you talked about the script? What was his take on it that sort of made you want to cast him and make you want to work with him?
Well, actually, no, he put me through the ringer a little bit more than that. I ended up 2 weeks later. 2 weeks later, actually, was still casting for someone else, and I popped up at that too. Yeah, no, we.
Well, I just don't like anyone else telling me what to do. So I was like, Aaron's not going to tell me how to cast my movie. I'm going to figure out how to cast my movie. So yeah, I resisted a little bit.
Yeah, no, he made it challenging, and I think that was almost the part of it. Like, and the ping pong too, it was almost like, can you keep up? He's a really amazing ping pong. He can play really well.
Can you?
No. But I knew I had
I played
to.
with my left hand with him.
He actually goes, I'm going to move to my left hand. He's that good. But I can at least get the bat to the ball. But then he started throwing in questions with each hit. Like, so what do you think about this? And I was like, okay, trying to hit and answer him. But I knew that I had to, that was almost a challenge in itself. It was like, this is a test. Can you keep up with me? Can you be my partner in this? Because this movie
actually, I just wanted to play ping pong.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious about. Was this some
It
chess
wasn't
level?
a test. I just wanted to. I was like, there's someone to play ping pong with.
No, absolutely. But I think the whole movie was a bit like that. You'd be on the edge of you know.
I mean, it makes sense that we're here now talking about the film, because this was like, kind of like a marriage being formed. And, you know, in all films, there's a special relationship that forms between the director and the star. But, you know, no film I've ever worked on has required that level of sort of trust and kind of being in sync as The Wall did, because we're both so exposed. You know, we're just relying on each other.
And you said that you didn't have time to sort of modify the performance too much while you were shooting. You basically had to you had to commit to what you were doing and go with that. Whereas, you know, you say you're a director that has crazy ADD and it's all in one location. It's all on
Short
him
attention
for the most
span,
part.
I said.
Oh, excuse me. Were you worried at all that, like, you know, you wanted to have as many options going into the editing room to see how much you had to ramp up the pace or ramp up the intensity?
No, because I'd had this experience on Swingers of really not having the option other than to commit to one idea, and said, you know what, I think my gut instincts are pretty good. Then suddenly, I went from doing these 2 independent films to Bourne Identity, and suddenly I had a lot of money, and I suddenly started covering lots of different ways to do a scene, and ended up with like a lot of footage, but nothing I really loved. I actually went back, and in 2 weeks of reshoots on the Bourne Identity, I reshot fully a quarter of the movie. You know, in the kind of intensity that we had on the wall. So after that, I started to learn that to really create environments where I have to go with my gut instinct and not give myself too many choices.
When you choose to do movies, I think about a number of the movies that you've made. I think Go, your last film with Tom Cruise, Live, Die, Repeat, and this film. And I think it seems to me that you are obsessed with sort of what you can experiment with narratively and seeing what kind of challenge you can throw at yourself and how it's going to come out in the end. Do you generally know that you're going to succeed by the end, that you're going to be able to take on these big narrative risks in terms of in terms of storytelling, and it's going to work?
No, I definitely don't know. I mean, that's the one. Some things get easier with my career, like Aaron showing up on my doorstep. You know, that didn't happen when I was making Swingers. That, you know, an amazing talent just presents themselves to you. So some things get easier, but one of the things that gets harder is that because I am pushing myself and trying to do things I've never done before, I often get to a place in my movies where it's not working, and I'm just distraught. And I turn to my friends, and I'm like, my career's over, and it's not going to work. And they're like, you said that on the last movie. And I'm like, I know, but this one, and they're like, and you said it on the movie before. I'm like, no, but this one may be the one that finally, you know, I went too far, and it just doesn't work, and I'm falling flat on my face. And no one will give me a sympathetic ear. But I've been through, including on The Wall, I've been through it on every one of my movies, and you know, The Wall doesn't open till tomorrow, but I already am extremely proud of it. Like, I'm like, wow, and I sort of feel like I dodged a bullet. I'm like, I don't want to do that again. Like, I don't know.
Do you usually feel like you dodged a bullet at the end of making a movie, or do you generally feel like, I made a great movie, or do you just feel like, I dodged a bullet on that one?
No, I dodged a bullet, for sure, to be honest. I'm like, because I took a lot of chances, and you just don't know. I mean, when I look back at The Wall and how many things had to happen in exactly that order in order for to lead me to make the movie that we made together. Like, you can't count on that luck a second time.
Do you ever get a sense of this insecurity on set with him, or does he hold his cards pretty close to the chest?
No, I like Doug said, this was a partnership, and I felt fully committed and secure. Yeah, it is a trust and a boundary and a thing. So. And I put all my trust in his hands, and he puppeteered me through it. But he's a very natural, instinctive director. I mean it by, like, he really embraces and improvises with the environment. I mean, we were making big, bold decisions as we were going along. Things were changing. Dust storms were kicking up. We embraced that. We went with that. We were trying new things, and going off script every now and again, but keeping the intention there and the conflict there. And it was the best experience I've ever had. It was an experiment. We were bold, and we were living on the edge. And it's like, yeah, it was a great big risk, and that's the best way. I mean, that's when you're having fun. It was a real passion project.
It shows on the film. It's a great movie. The risk really paid off. Let's get some questions from you people.
Sandstorms aside, for each of you, what was the most challenging aspect making this film?
I guess I mean, I went in with the intention this was going to be extremely hard, and things are going to arise that I'm not experienced in, and I guess what I naively didn't really think about was having a scene partner. Because, yeah, sometimes there'll be 10 pages of dialogue, and sometimes you can get through some of it, and there are waves. And sometimes you're just relying on another person to react to, or hoping that, you know, the next time the camera's going to be over my shoulder and onto that person, I can have a little break and kind of think what they're doing, and, you know, and then, so you never had that moment. It was constantly clocking, so it's so exposed and vulnerable, and that made it all the more thrilling.
Who were you generally acting with when it came to the sniper that you were talking to?
So I think what I needed to do was find what that scene partner was, and at times it was the cameraman, Roman, because he was very close and intimate with macro lenses, and sometimes it was that, and sometimes, most of the time, it was Doug. Doug would be the other person on the radio to me. He'd be the one responding to me, and I'd be getting more of a reaction out of Doug.
Not
than
in the
anyone.
final movie.
No, and all that stuff was all put in post, you see, so I didn't have that other voice. We had an actor now and again come on, and we had a script supervisor, and sometimes, that person's just reading from a script, and you can't really generate much of a reaction for someone reading to you, so there was that, but I almost had to create, I think the wall almost became my scene partner. I created the relationship with the wall like it was a love-hate thing. I mean, I loved it because it was protecting me from the antagonist, from the sniper, but I hated it because it didn't protect me from the sun, and I was bashing my back against it, and there was bricks in my way, and there was, and it was uncomfortable. So we had this kind of, that was my partnership, and I needed to find something to attach myself to, someone to rely on, and the weather became a character too, so that became another thing.
You brought up the DP using these macro lenses on his face, and it reminded me when I saw the film, I was really struck by these beautiful close-ups of him where he's dirty in the face, and all of a sudden the film it feels very grainy and a little bit darker on his face. I'm wondering if you had envisioned those before going into it, or if you're sort of improvising on set and finding sort of beautiful photography as you're filming.
No, I had an amazing DP partner on the movie. Because sometimes I shoot my own movies, but I only do sort of one look. It's sort of the Bourne Identity look. If you kind of want shaky, handheld, gritty, little ugly, like I'm your guy. But I didn't want that look for the wall. So I had an amazing DP who did this incredible short film in Russia, and then he's done a lot of films with David Ayer, and basically every David Ayer film. Roman, can you pronounce his last name? Oh, no. Russian last name that I cannot pronounce. So we go Roman the Russian. And Roman showed me a way of simplifying the photography, because I said I've got like a very short attention span, so if it were me, Aaron's sort of stuck in one place for a lot of the movie. The camera would be moving every which way. I'd be flying over his head, I'd be circling him, be crane shots, and Roman's like, why are you moving the camera? I'm like, because I'm bored. I want it to move, like I'm an American film goer. I need my camera moving. I can't, things got to move for me. And he's like, he showed me a way of creating tension and excitement by not moving the camera and by getting right in on Aaron's face and with the most incredible photography.
Yeah, there's beautiful photography in those.
And there's no lights on the set.
What did you shoot on?
We shot on 16 millimeter anamorphic, super 16 anamorphic.
So you shot on film?
Yeah.
Wow, what led you to that decision? I mean, I would say 99% of movies made like this would be shot on an Alexa or something.
And it would look it would look too real.
Yeah.
Right? We see plenty of war on the nightly news. I mean, actually, in a way, part of making the movie The Wall is because there's soldiers out there fighting every day, and they're not on the news anymore. They've been eclipsed. But there are, if you look every week, you won't find a week that there's not a soldier who's dying in combat. And so, but I didn't want it to look like the nightly news, if the nightly news actually covered this stuff. And so I wanted it to have kind of a more World War II quality. I mean, I love World War II movies. I love, that there's a kind of a moral simplicity to it. Like, that's the bad guy, we're the good guys, we got to survive. And I kind of wanted to make a film that had that ethos. And it's kind of an old-fashioned way, right? Because maybe the modern way is to question everything. And and when you do a film, when you really do it from the soldier's point of view, right from ground level, and not from 30,000 feet, there's no moral ambiguity, right? That person's trying to kill you. So it's kill or be killed. And I wanted to get back to that kind of simplicity, and I just thought film would be a great way to sort of subconsciously communicate that to the audience, and it does.
Why 16 and not 35? Sorry, I'm getting really nerdy, but.
Yeah, I hadn't shot 16 millimeter since my student film days.
Was Swingers 35?
Swingers was 35.
Oh, wow.
Swingers was 35, but we're using old film stock. If you know movies, you know when they use a roll of film that's like a 3-minute roll of film or a 10-minute roll of film, you know when they get to like 1 minute left on the roll, and they change it. They don't use that last minute because scenes are usually longer than a minute, and so they don't throw that out. They sell it to movies like Swingers. So we shot all of Swingers with these little rolls of film, none of which lasted more than a minute. So, and I had a few rolls left over from Twister that were 4-minute rolls.
The Jan de Bont.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was all daytime, and Swingers is all night, so it's the wrong stock, but they were at least 4 minutes long, so those were treasured. So if I really wanted to give the actors in Swingers a chance to do the whole scene continuously, I'd bring out one of the treasured rolls of film from Twister. But otherwise, you know, every scene had to be broken down into 1-minute chunks. And in the case of The Wall, because if you want to be nerdy, it's because we're shooting outside in very, very hot sun. And so 16 millimeter under those conditions has way less grain than it does under any other condition. So you end up with something that feels a lot like 35 millimeter, but it's just got a little bit more interesting texture. And you know, we're creating a piece of art with The Wall. I mean, not pretentious art, but it's not, again, I don't want it to look like a gritty, just evening news war footage. I wanted, you know, because for me, The Wall's so much about the bigger idea of never quitting and just picking yourself up when it seems like there's no possible way and all hope is lost, to just keep picking yourself up. And that's what led me to the decision for 16.
Well, it looks beautiful, guys. I have to let you go. It's been wonderful talking to you. The film comes out tomorrow, right? People can see it tomorrow. Okay, great.
And I'm actually doing I make films for for audiences, and so I'll be going to Times Square tomorrow night. I'm doing a Q&A after the 8:30 showing at the AMC 25 in Times Square. And I just that's at the end of the day for me. The experience is watching the film with audiences. That's why I do it.
Do you do that a lot? I mean, I know a lot of people finish the film one screening and then they're done. Will you go? Do you go watch your film sometimes?
As long as it's in the theater, I'm always popping in. Right. Oh yeah.
Just to hear an audience reaction.
Yeah, I love it. It's and I know in the case of The Wall, because I've sat through it with a number of audiences, that they're just going to be riveted, and there's something very satisfying for me about delivering that kind of entertainment and excitement to an audience.
Absolutely. Guys, congratulations on The Wall. Thanks so much for being here. Thank you
for having us.
Thank you.